Let us understand how to handle the data hazards. But before you handle the data hazards, you need to consider a few factors. Let us stay focused. You know that data hazard will occur due to the dependencies. Here there are two instructions, I1 and I2, in which I2 is dependent on I1, our classical example. So I2 will have to be separated from I1 for sufficient number of clock cycles. This is called a stall cycle. So stall cycle is equal to k minus 1, which is equal to 3. So I1 and I2 must be separated for 3 clock cycles. So rather than sending I2 into the pipeline in the second clock cycle, we will send I2 into the pipeline in the fifth clock cycle. So for 3 clock cycles, the pipeline is wasted, right? The pipeline time is wasted. This is called a stall cycle. Stall cycle is the biggest problem because when you execute a program, in a program, there can be numerous dependent instructions like this. Okay. In a 100 instruction program, as we discussed, there are, let us say, 30 dependent instruction, which leads to 30 into 3, that is equal to 90 stall cycles per program, per a 100 instruction simple program. Now you can understand when thousands of the programs are being executed continuously in the computer system, how the stall cycles will affect the speed up. Okay. Now we need to consider a few measures to reduce the stall cycles. Okay. The simplest method which cannot be followed is ignore the dependencies. First one, let us say, ignore the dependencies. Ignore the dependencies. That is, we do not ask I2 to wait till I1 gets finished. We will send I2 into pipe directly. At that time, what will happen? The program output will be wrong, right? That is again, x is equal to a plus b, y is equal to x plus z. Y is the following instruction to this one. Okay, so y will have to use only the updated x. When you send y without having any gaps, just after, right after the x, the y is going to read the previous value of the x before the previous instruction writes the value into it. For an example, before these two instructions gets executed, the value is 20. Okay, then this instruction will get executed, x is equal to a plus b. Then 20 will get updated to 30. But what you're doing is you're not wasting any clock cycles. You're not following any stall cycles. You just send y right after this instruction. Okay, you send this instruction right after the first instruction without following any stall cycles. So before it is updated by this instruction, this next instruction is going to read the previous value of the x, which is a serious problem. Here, program outcome will be wrong. Simple common sense this is. That is, if you do not consider the dependencies and you ignore the dependencies and send I2 right after I1, definitely program output will be wrong because I2 is going to read the previous value of x, but not after execution of the I1. So ignore the dependencies doesn't work because program outcome will be wrong. If you consider why we are using the computer system is for program execution, right? If you simply ignore the dependencies, the very purpose of the computer system, which is program execution, will be right at the stake. We are not going to fulfill the definition of the computer system, that is program execution. If you ignore the dependencies, program execution will be wrong. Okay, so we can't ignore the dependencies. So this method cannot be followed. So we are going to consider the other methods in which the stall cycles can be reduced. There are a few methods. Let me tell you. The data hazards can be handled in 3 different ways. The first one is hardware interlock. Okay. And the second one is operand forwarding. And the third one is delayed load. Okay. Simple. Here the approach is the hardware interlock is going to identify the dependencies in between the instructions. First of all, understand what is the hardware interlock. Okay. In CPU, we are going to, of course, the CPU is a blend of several components that are such as ALU, register set, and the other things. This is our CPU. When you use a method called hardware interlock to avoid the data hazards, you are going to involve one more small circuit, which is called hardware interlock in the CPU. Okay. What is the job of the hardware interlock? There are several instructions incoming into the CPU. I1, I2, I3, I4, I5, I6, so on, right? This hardware interlock is going to watch these instructions, okay? And it is going to identify the dependencies in between every consecutive instructions, every 2 instructions. So initially it is going to check for a dependency in between I1 and I2. If there is no dependency, I2 can be sent right after I1. And again, it will check a dependency for I2 and I3. If there is no dependency, then I3 will be allowed to enter into the pipe right after I2. And again, it is going to check for a dependency in I3 and I4, in between I3 and I4. If there is a dependency, if there is no dependency, fine, I4 can enter. But if there is a dependency, these I3 and I4 will be separated by sufficient number of clock cycles. Okay. It is going to implement the stall cycles in between the dependent instruction. For that, it is going to check for the dependencies in between every 2 instructions. If there is a dependency found out, then this hardware interlock is going to separate those 2 dependent instructions for k-1 stall cycles. So in this way, hardware interlock ensures smoother execution of the program, rather the proper correct execution of the program. Hardware interlock does not guarantee you that stall cycles will be reduced, but hardware interlock can guarantee you that program outcome will be, I will write it here, it will give you a guarantee that program output will always be correct, because this is the very purpose of the computer system. The program output can never be wrong. So what it does is, it is going to identify the dependencies in between every instruction, and if there is a dependency, it is going to separate it by a sufficient number of clock cycles to ensure that the program output will be correct. But here, it won't give you any guarantee that it is going to reduce the stall cycles. It is going to implement as many stall cycles as required in between 2 dependent instructions. That is how hardware interlock works. Now, you can clearly see that the hardware interlock is of no use if a designer wants to reduce the stall cycles, because hardware interlock will not give you any guarantee that stall cycles will get reduced. Okay. The next technique is operand forwarding. Perhaps the best technique in handling the data hazards. Okay. What is operand forwarding? If you can see that, in this is the execution phase, right? This is the execution phase. Now, the execution phase will be done in ALU. Okay. This is the ALU segment, let us say. If there are 2 dependent instructions, I1 followed by I2, I2 will have to wait for I1 to produce the output. then output can be used as an input to the I2. Okay, so for that, I2 will have to wait till I1 gets completely finished. Okay, till when instruction gets executed, I1 value, rather, the output of the I1 will be written in some register file. Okay, one register will get updated. One processor's register will get updated. And again, X is equal to A plus B, Y is equal to X plus Z. So here X is important. For the second instruction, X value should be available. For that, first instruction should be executed. The moment the first instruction gets executed, first instruction is going to write the X value in a register, some Rn. Then X value will be produced. Then only second instruction can enter into the pipeline, because the corresponding register which is equal to X is updated. So second instruction can enter into the pipe so that it will be able to read. Okay, so here in the operand forwarding technique, what will happen is, let me draw stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4. Okay, the output of stage 4 will be written into the register file. Okay, once after the register file is updated, then X value will be available. So the next instruction can come in. But in operand forwarding technique, what will happen is, the output of the ALU will be again connected to the input of the ALU as an operand for the incoming instruction. Okay, that is, the operand will get directly forwarded to the next instruction. Generally, I2 will have to read it from the register. Okay, when register file will get updated, at the end of, after the end of the fourth stage execution. Okay, but here in the operand forwarding technique, I2 will be requested to enter into the pipeline without waiting for that register file to be written. Okay, the moment I1 here, I2 enters here. The moment I1 enters here, I2 enters in stage 2. The moment I1 enters in stage 4, I2 can enter into stage 3. Okay, so I1 can be here, I2 can be here. Even though I2 requires the output of I1, I2 did not wait to enter into the pipe, because operand will get directly forwarded. Okay, the moment I1 finishes its execution, it throws the operand directly back to I2. Why and how? Because here the output of the ALU, by using a special line, will again be connected to the input of the ALU. Okay, so I2 need not read the value from the register file, as it can enter into the S4, that is stage 4. The operand is directly available at the input, directly collecting this input. This is called X. It can get into the ALU stage and it will be able to finish this. This is how operand forwarding technique will work. In operand forwarding technique, stall cycles are limited to just one. Okay, with just one stall cycle, operand forwarding technique will work. Without operand forwarding technique, you know that if the I2 has to read the register file, it will take k-1 stall cycles. But with the operand forwarding, the I2 will have to wait only for one stall cycle for the operand is to be produced. Then after wasting one stall cycles, it will be able to enter into segment 4. Okay, this is how operand forwarding technique will work.